Danish work culture is truly unique and can be a bit of a culture shock for those coming from a more traditional or a hierarchical work environment. In this video, we'll take an in-depth look at some of the key aspects of the Danish work culture that expats should then be aware of. By the end of this video, you'll have a better understanding of what is it like to work in Denmark, to work in a Danish company, and how to navigate the cultural differences that you may encounter. So let's dive in. If you're new here, my name is Mario. I have been in Denmark, working in Denmark for more than 10 years, and in this channel I help people living in Denmark, but also in Europe, on financial independence. The number one thing you should know about the Danish work culture is the emphasis on the work-life balance. One of the most striking things about the Danish work culture is the emphasis on this work-life balance. Because again, Danish people are the Danes, they value their leisure time and their personal lives just as much as they value their career. And that's reflected in the working hours and vacation policies that are working on in the country. So the average Danish work week is 37 hours, that compares to an EU average of over 41 hours. And Danish employees, so anyone working in Denmark in a company or whatever arrangement you may have, is entitled to at least 5 weeks of paid vacation per year, plus sometimes 5 more days of paid time off. So for example, in my case, I work in Maersk, which is one of the big logistics companies that we have here in Denmark, and I have 6 weeks in total of paid holidays. On top of this, many Danish companies offer flexible working hours and the option to work from home. And that was the case also before COVID. So even though COVID has made this a bit more of a cultural norm across the world, it was very common to have these opportunities, the flexible working hours and working from home here in Denmark before all this thing happens. It's also not uncommon for people working in Denmark, on the Danes, to work up to, for example, sometimes 3:30, 4 o'clock, and then just leave, even if they need to do more stuff, because again, they need to pick up the kids or there's something important that they need to do. And again, they don't need to stay really long at the office if that's like the family demands it. This focus on the work-life balance, I have seen it with colleagues. It's a bit of a shock sometimes. And what I have seen is that some people that come from a more intense work culture, they might feel guilt that they are taking too much time off or they're leaving too early. But again, this is one of the things that if you work here, this is one of the big benefits. So you should embrace it as much as you can. And in case you want to work much and work a lot more, I mean, nobody will stop you from doing that as well. The second thing I want to highlight are the flat hierarchies. Another key aspect of the Danish work culture are the flat hierarchies, so the flat organizational structure. In Danish companies, there's often little difference between a high-level manager and their employees, and everyone is seen as a part of the same team. There are of course titles and formal authority, but it's less showy and a lot less important, you could even say, than in other countries in Europe. For example, in Germany, a lot of the things are about the title, they're Mr. or Doctor and so on. Here, nobody cares. So, or no, at least it's not that nobody cares, but it's a lot less important than it's in other places. You are empowered as an employee, even when you're young and new, to take initiative and make decisions within your area of responsibility. Again, there's less emphasis of following the change of command or seeking approval from higher ups. At the end of the day, like, you are a lot more empowered. And if you're an expat and you are used to a more of a hierarchical organization, this can be hard to get used to, because it can also go both ways. If you're a manager, your employees will also expect that you are like this as well, that they have the chance to speak up, that they have the chance to be proactive, and they don't want your direction from the get-go. I just want to also add an example to illustrate this. When I started in Maersk, we had the opportunity to meet, or I had the opportunity, I was in the student network, and then we had a chance to meet some of the very senior stakeholders, some of the very senior managers. And they would come up to us and they would even be self-deprecating, they would be just so down to earth and so friendly, which again, I was very shocked at the beginning, because again, I expected, okay, this is a very high level manager. The third thing I want to highlight is the consensus-driven decision making. And I was kind of hinting a little bit into this already, because again, in Danish companies, and you could extend it into Scandinavia, it's similar in Norway and similar in Sweden, it's even more extreme in Sweden, you would even say. The decision making is collaborative and also consensus driven. Rather than again having a top-down directive from management, decisions are often made in group discussions, and there's a lot of compromises. Even again, when someone has an authority, he or she is expected to have this group discussion and make compromises where required. There's a lot more meetings again on gathering input and building consensus. Everyone's opinions is valued regardless of their position in the company. Sometimes the disagreements are seen as an opportunity for constructive dialogue than for conflict. And because of this, you would say decisions might take longer to reach, but once they get there, they are often more widely accepted and supported. There's a pros and cons of this. As I said, like sometimes it might take a bit longer, but then once you actually get the decision in place, it's a lot more approachable and supported. And if you are used to, as an expat, to work in a more directive sense and just get things done, you might find this as a hurdle, and that's something you will need to get used to. Again, I would think that at least in the big companies, this is changing a little bit, where we actually see some more assertiveness of managers. But at the end of the day, in a lot of places, this is very ingrained. And you need to, again, adapt to the Danish culture if that's where the place you want to work. Next one is the informal communication style. So in the Danish work culture, it's also been very characterized by the informal and direct communication style. So again, Danish people value authenticity, value honesty, and in all their interactions, and this also extends to the workplace. Again, it's very common, it's almost the only way that you could see here is that people address each other, like colleagues, managers, and even senior managers, by their first name only, again, regardless of the seniority and the age. And this again goes all the way to the CEO, where we actually call him or her by the first name. Email and other written communication are normally brief and to the point. There's no excessive formalities, there's no lot of pleasantries, we just go straight to it. And also, you'd even say, when it comes to feedback, for example, when you're a manager or you work with a manager, like the way we work here is that we are a lot more direct, and sometimes constructively, not sugarcoating and not being around the bush, we just basically go straight to the point. For expats that are not used to this direct way of communicating, that you might need to do some of the pleasantries, that you're a bit uncomfortable taking things straight to the point, this will be some learning experience. But again, you'll figure out that once you do and you move to the adapting to the local culture, this can actually be a very efficient way to work as well. Next up is the social events and the workplace culture. Danes again value the sense of community and the camaraderie, you could call it, in the workplace, and this is often fostered through social activities and traditions. In many, for example, Danish companies, there's a tradition to have a Friday bar where colleagues gather for drinks and for socializing after work. There's also regularly team events or team building opportunities where you might go out with a company, where you might have some sport activity. Sometimes you might be, like in some companies, they go on holidays for a few days. So again, not that it's Danish specific, but it is something that is quite the norm here, as most of the Danish companies have canteens in the office, or a place where you can actually have lunch inside the office or arranged by the company. There's a really good opportunity to mix and chat with a lot of colleagues and have that moment of socializing at the office. There's also a sense of loyalty and commitment to one's colleagues and one's company, and that's something that, even though with the younger generations, we are more of a job hoppers and looking for the best opportunity for ourselves, this is something that you can actually still see that people really care about their work and the company. On the team events, I just want to highlight one personal story that it might be good for you to know, that there's a lot of drinking as well. So you might be thinking okay, in a professional context, I might not want to drink so much alcohol, but the reality is that, for example, in the work parties or any events that might be related to work, there's gonna be also quite a bit of alcohol. And that took some time, for example, for me to get used to see your boss getting drunk and so on. So that's funny. But again, for some people it might be a bit uncomfortable. And again, nobody will expect you to drink or to be super social in all these type of things. But it's also a nice way to, again, build a network and connect with your fellow colleagues. The last thing I want to touch on is the trust and autonomy. Danish managers tend to trust their team members to do their job and to make decisions independently, as I said, without constant oversight and without micromanagement. Again, employees are given a high degree of freedom and flexibility on how they approach their work. There's an emphasis on if you get things done and if the outcomes are complete and things are good, you don't really need to be telling your manager, I came at this time or I go in at this time, so long again as you get things done. Managers, again, they're expected to be there to provide support. For example, as a manager myself, I provide support to my team, I give guidance, I give this is the vision of where we want to go, but I'm not there pushing them all the time on micromanaging this or micromanaging that. That's not normal. Of course, might vary, your mileage may vary, might be different from manager to manager. Employees are trusted to manage their own time and in their own workload, so long as they meet their deadlines, we're good. If you are more used to your manager being super hands-on and giving a lot of guidance and being there to help you every single step of the way and to tell you what to do here and here and here, this could be a bit of a challenge. I think, again, it demands a different type of personality to be proactive, to look into yourself and trust yourself, again, to not have someone behind your shoulder telling you what to do. I think it's an exciting opportunity as well, but again, for some people, it might demand some kind of adjustment. One more thing I want to highlight is that this is the traditional Danish work culture, you could say, but what I have seen myself working here for a long time as well and working in some of the bigger companies such as Maersk and Carlsberg is that the culture is changing a little bit. It's becoming more the norm that in the big companies we are becoming a bit more directive, we're becoming a bit more more micromanaging in some cases, because there are so many, for example, managers that are coming from abroad that might bring their own culture, and so even though they might adapt to the Danish context, they will still bring their own ways. Also, if they come from bigger companies that have a different work structure, and then they come to Denmark with that way of working. Not to say that it's good or bad, it's just something for you to know. So what I have telling you today is the more common case, but your mileage may vary, you could say. But that's all for me. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe this video to get more insights on the Danish work culture and the expat life in cities like Copenhagen. And if you have any questions on experience experiences you want to share about working in Denmark, leave them in the comments. I love hearing from you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.